Ladies and gentlemen, history has been made. For the first time since 2014, Roman Reigns is a heel. No joke, I am not exaggerating. Roman Reigns is now a heel. He has now aligned himself with Paul Heyman. With the draft coming up in October, what could happen? Could Roman Reigns get drafted to Raw and he's the guy that dethrones Drew McIntyre? But there are so many questions to be asked. What happens to Brock Lesnar and so many other things. But the fact that now WWE has finally done the one thing that we have been wanting WWE to do with Roman Reigns for the past 6 years. Make this guy a heel. It finally worked. One question that people have asked, we don't know how long this could last. Some people may think, I've heard some people say that, WWE can afford to do this because they're not going to lose, make a wish. They're not going to lose money. They're not going to lose anything from having their top babyface, portray a heel. I mean, you could create a new babyface. You've got Drew McIntyre now. Drew McIntyre is basically now the number one babyface in all of WWE now. You've pretty much turned Roman heel. Now that makes Drew McIntyre the number one babyface in all of WWE. But on Smackdown, I've been hearing a lot of complaints about The Fiend. That, oh my god, he's going to be buried because they turned Roman heel. They're focusing all on Roman to become Universal Champion. They're sacrificing The Fiend. They're sacrificing Bray Wyatt. They're burying him. He's going to be a transitional champion. The Fiend isn't buried. Okay, guys? The Fiend is not buried. Bray Wyatt is not buried. Every time when people say Bray Wyatt is buried, he's still on television. You people don't know what the definition of buried means. Bray Wyatt, he's a guy, and I'm going to say this. Bray Wyatt is a guy that doesn't need a championship to be positioned as the top guy. Look at how Bray Wyatt gets booked. Sure, he loses a lot of his feuds, but the fact that the guy gets booked on the show a lot, and he's in high-profile matches like at WrestleMania with John Cena, he's in high-profile matches with Daniel Bryan, Finn Balor, like he's had so many top-level contenders. He's always been one of those guys that has always been in the main card. He's always been one of those guys that WWE calls upon. Not every wrestler needs to be a world champion. Not every single wrestler needs a world championship to be proven to be top tier contenders. Sasha Banks is one of the best examples of this. Look at her throughout her entire run without a championship through 2018 and 2019. Sasha Banks has proven that you don't really need a championship to be considered one of the top stars in the company. She still gets featured every week. Sasha Banks always gets featured. With or without a title, she's always featured. WWE has never devalued Sasha. They've never devalued Sasha, the main event, or anything like that. She's always been one of the top stars in the company. If you're on the main card, if you're on Raw and Smackdown every week, you're considered one of WWE's stars. And sometimes you don't need a championship to be a top contender. Like Becky Lynch, like Charlotte, Bayley now, Sasha Banks, Alexa Bliss, Asuka, and so many other women. I would say Naomi, but I would love to see Naomi get another championship run. But there are so many women on that roster that can easily, I'll even say Shayna Baszler. There are some women on the roster that don't even need a championship to be considered top level contenders, or even just be on the card every week. Just because you're that good or you're a top tier contender doesn't always mean you need to be a champion. That's why I say I don't want to see Shayna Baszler champion. To me, she doesn't need it. To me, Shayna doesn't need championships. You can still have her on Raw every week. She just doesn't need it. Not every wrestler needs to be champions to be on top of the card. So Bray Wyatt is fine. And one other thing that people have been, and another thing that a lot of people have been asking is, who's the babyface? Who is the babyface in this whole scenario? Since we now know Roman is clearly the heel, I'd probably have to say Bray Wyatt, because I don't think Braun's a heel. I don't know if Braun's a babyface. I don't know if he's a heel. I don't know if both Braun and Bray are babyfaces. I don't know. If they're both babyfaces, then yeah, I guess that makes sense. But Bray, to me, has more potential to be the top babyface on Smackdown more than Braun Strowman. The Fiend easily has more potential to be one of the biggest stars on Smackdown, the #1 babyface. And considering that there's a draft coming up in October, who's to say Roman Reigns gets drafted to Raw and he's not Universal Champion? What if Paul Heyman requests him to be traded to Monday Night Raw so he can challenge Drew McIntyre? What if Randy Orton comes over to SmackDown to challenge for the Universal Championship? You know what I'm saying? With the draft coming up, we don't know what could happen. Alexa Bliss could move over to Monday Night Raw. Bray Wyatt could move over to Monday Night Raw. Braun Strowman could move over to Monday Night Raw. We don't know. There's a draft coming up. I've been told it's happening in October. So there is a draft coming up. We won't know the circumstances of everything until the draft. AJ Styles, he should now be lifted up to the Universal title picture, but he's still in the Intercontinental title picture. But in my opinion, I think for how things are set right now, I think Bray Wyatt could easily be one of the top babyfaces on SmackDown. And as I said, he doesn't need the Universal Championship to do that. He doesn't need to be the champion to do that. He doesn't. The thing that I have problems here is that fans believe you need to be a champion to be considered a top babyface. Not only to be the top babyface, but to be considered one of the top tier contenders. No, that's not the case at all. That's not the case at all. You can be... You could be so good at your job, you don't even need a championship. There is just some wrestlers, as I said, there is just some wrestlers that don't need championships to be considered top stars of the company. Like I said, Sasha Banks. But Sasha Banks, you know, she deserves a championship run because we want to see Sasha Banks actually go on and have a nice, long, lengthy run. We know Sasha Banks can easily be a top star with or without a title. Well, we know she can be without a title. We just want to see Sasha finally have a long championship run. That's all we want. But we know she can easily be one of the top stars without a title. SmackDown started off with Vince McMahon. He was backstage. He asked... Ooh, my cable came undone. Jesus Christ. Stupid. Sorry about that, guys. Stupid. Okay, we started off with Vince McMahon. He talked to Adam Pearce. I didn't know who that bald guy was, but his name's Adam Pearce. But he talks to Adam Pearce and tells him to go get he tasks him to get Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman, and Roman Reigns to agree to the contract at Payback. And he sets off his mission. But one thing you notice, the one thing that he said is a very interesting scenario here. Adam Pearce mentions about Retribution. He tells all the security guards to make sure Retribution doesn't get into the building at all. And there was no Retribution. There was no Retribution at all. And we see Paul Heyman with Roman Reigns. So who's to say, this is my theory, who's to say that Paul Heyman is responsible for Retribution? Shane Thorne, Chelsea Green, Dominic Dijakovic, you know? Maybe Mia Yim, maybe Caden Carter. I heard Dio Madden. I heard his name thrown around. You guys remember who Dio Madden is? He used to commentate on Raw. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of names thrown around. But I'm telling you guys, what if Retribution have to do with Paul Heyman? It's very possible. We didn't see them at all. And it's quite a bit of a coincidence we don't see them and Paul Heyman's on the show. So I think Paul Heyman is the mastermind behind Retribution and Roman Reigns is the leader of Retribution. I think it all comes together. In my opinion. So let's talk about the rest of SmackDown. We had Jeff Hardy start off the show. Jeff talked about his Intercontinental title win. AJ Styles came out really angry and pissed off that Jeff Hardy cheated to beat him. Jeff Hardy then issues an open challenge, but he says, I'm going to issue an open challenge to anyone other than you, AJ Styles. And AJ just completely loses it. And then Jeff Hardy goes on to face Shinsuke Nakamura, one half of the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, which Jeff Hardy ends up retaining. And then we get the return of Sami Zayn. It's so cool to see Sami Zayn back. He has the Intercontinental Championship in his hands. He has the Intercontinental Championship in his hands, well, the one he won, and claims that he is still the rightful Intercontinental Champion. I have to agree with Sami Zayn on this one. He never lost. No one defeated him for the Intercontinental Championship. Now, before I get anybody telling me, oh, but Sami Zayn, he got the title taken from him. It was stripped from him. Yeah, but he never lost it. Still, he never lost it. Did I see anybody pin Sami Zayn to win the Intercontinental Championship? No. Just because the guy took time off doesn't mean he isn't in the right to make claims that he is deserving to be the Intercontinental Champion. The next time, I am telling you guys, if this happened to anybody else, if this happened to your favorite superstars, if this happened to your favorite, let's say, Naomi. I love Naomi. She's one of the best examples of what happened to Sami Zayn. She ended up losing her title due to injury. She never lost it. No one pinned her. No one submitted her to take the championship from her. She came back and she regained the championship. That's what needs to happen to Sami Zayn. He needs to regain the Intercontinental Championship. I don't care what anybody thinks. I think Sami Zayn is more deserving to be the Intercontinental Champion more than Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy shouldn't be champion. Jeff Hardy, they only gave Jeff Hardy the Intercontinental Championship just out of pity. They only gave it to him out of pity because, we need to give him the Cinderella story for his comeback. That's the only reason why they gave it to Jeff Hardy. AJ Styles should just be kind of moved up to the Universal Championship picture, in my opinion. So Adam Pearce gets Bray Wyatt to sign the contract, which he does. He agrees to sign the contract. Then we had Sasha and Bayley. Sasha and Bayley came out to talk about their upcoming match with Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax at Payback. A few things to take note here is that Bayley really loves to be a dick. Because Bayley was so excited to be all like, oh, I'm Bayley Dostraps, and I'm with my best friend. She turns over to Sasha, and Sasha's got one title. She's like, oh yeah, Sasha Banks. You know? I'm with my best friend. You know, she was all excited to say 2 belts Banks, but she realized she didn't have another belt. Sasha, you know, trying to maintain her composure. She's just talking quietly, kind of normally. She's talking quietly and normally, just trying to, you know, try to get over the fact that she lost the Raw Women's Championship. But then Bayley goes on to say something that really piqued my interest. Bayley went on to say that she wanted to apologize to Sasha Banks. And I thought Bayley was going to be a good friend and apologize for not helping her. But what does Bayley go ahead and say? Bayley goes ahead and says that that her apology is that she is sorry that she didn't stop Sasha from challenging Asuka. She's like, oh, I know you wanted to be like me. You wanted to have 2 titles just like me. And you wanted to have fun. We had fun. But I should have stopped you from challenging Asuka because of your history of not being able to defend the Raw Women's Championship. Basically just taking a blatant shot at the fact that Sasha can't defend a singles championship. I wouldn't really call that an apology. Bayley. That's more you taking a shot at your friend for not being able to defend the title. And Sasha took that pretty personally. You could see the look on her face. She didn't really like what Bayley said. But she was trying to ignore it. She was just trying to, you know, you could just tell Sasha's just getting very frustrated. She's just trying to ignore it. She's just talking. She's like, I know. I just wanted to be 2 belts Banks and all this shit. Like, she's just talking casually. Then Nia and Shayna appear on the screen, telling about how Sasha and Bayley talk about how badly they need to win, and Nia and Shayna are on the screen vowing that they take the titles from them. Sasha's all like, do you think one loss affects me? It's like, do you think just because I lost 1 match that means that I'm personally affected? No, that doesn't mean that. I am going to retain my Women's Tag Team Championship. She specifically said her, not her and Bayley. And then Sasha says, then she says, I am coming for my vengeance. And when she says the word vengeance, you see her turning her head to Bayley. You see her turning her head to Bayley as she says the word vengeance. So clearly it's telling you that Sasha is eyeing Bayley and her SmackDown Women's Championship. In my personal opinion, Sasha Banks has to turn babyface here. There's really no alternative. Think about what Bayley said. Bayley said about how Sasha can't retain a championship. That doesn't sound like a babyface to me. That's definitely not a babyface comment. Bayley's comments were so heelish. Her comments were so heelish to Sasha. So Sasha is turning babyface. We can all kind of see Sasha's turning babyface. Sasha, I feel like they're gonna have Sasha attack Bayley out of anger and frustration because she's starting to get very fed up with Bayley. You know, putting herself ahead of their friendship. She said that they also said that the tag team championships are basically the values of their friendship. Bayley could always choose her championship over her friend, and she's done that already. Remember SummerSlam? Remember on SmackDown on SummerSlam after the Battle Royal? Bayley said she would rather focus on her SmackDown Women's Championship than worry about her friendship with Bayley. Than worry about her friendship with Sasha. So you can tell that Sasha is turning babyface in this whole scenario. So what do I think happens at Payback? Do I think Sasha and Bayley win, or do I think they lose? Well, it's kind of hard to tell. Braun Strowman then agrees to sign the contract for... He signs the contract for the Payback match, but he says as long as he gets Drew Gulak, and he just pretty much annihilates Drew Gulak. Sami Zayn then is backstage with Cesaro and Nakamura, pretty much annoying the poor guys. And Sami thinks just because... And then Sami reunites with his pals, and they tell him to leave. They tell him to leave because they don't want to associate with Sami Zayn anymore. And you know what? That's great. I would rather see Nakamura and Cesaro on their own, just as a tag team. Without Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn can just, he can easily go on his own. Next we had Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss. We also had Tamina. Hashtag we want Tamina. We had Tamina with Nikki Cross asking her how is Alexa. Nikki's holding the cup or mug, whatever you want to call it. The first gift that Alexa Bliss ever gave her. Alexa Bliss appears, all smiley and all happy. She says she's thinking about dyeing her hair and changing the looks of her hair. And then Nikki Cross looks at one part of her hair, and she says the words, and she says, "That reminds me a lot of the Fiend." So she utters the word "the Fiend." Alexa goes quiet for a couple of seconds, and then she goes crazy. And then she goes crazy and starts, like, I thought you were my best friend, and I guess you're not my best friend. And then she just takes Nikki Cross's cup and smashes it on the floor. How does this make Alexa the heel in any way? I mean, Alexa's justified for doing that, honestly. Because here's the thing, I hate the fact that they're turning Nikki heel. But as what I just told you guys before with Sasha and Bayley, Sasha's clearly turning the babyface while Bayley is just being the dick to Sasha. But Nikki Cross has done the same thing. Nikki Cross has been a dick to Alexa ever since failing to win the Smackdown Women's Championship. She pushed Alexa over. She's pushed Alexa over. She was obsessed with becoming the Smackdown Women's Champion, and it ultimately cost her friendship. With Alexa. The Fiend choked her out with the Man of a Claw. Braun Strowman gorilla presses Alexa. Nikki Cross is nowhere to be seen. Nikki Cross, her little best friend, is nowhere to be seen to help Alexa out. But for some reason, this makes Alexa the heel. Because people's lives change at the hands of the Fiend, so that now that makes us think, Alexa's got to turn heel. I would rather Nikki Cross turn heel. And I also find it funny that now that Sasha's turning babyface, we know Sasha's slowly turning babyface, and now that they're turning Alexa heel, I find that hilarious that those are the two people they are swapping. Sasha goes babyface, Alexa goes heel. Because I know what would happen if they were both on the same side. Certain people would love to see those two become a tag team, which is never ever going to happen, by the way. To everyone who thinks those two will be a tag team, never will happen. Which I find it hilarious that they're now that Sasha's turning babyface and Alexa goes heel. I think they can easily send Alexa Bliss over to Monday Night Raw when the draft happens. And if they want to draft the Fiend as well, you can also draft the Fiend. and Alexa and the Fiend are together. There you go. If they want to put Alexa together with the Fiend, then I guess you could. But I just think it's kind of weird. I just find it kind of weird and just really dumb that Nikki Cross is the one that's being a bad friend, but Alexa is the one that's turning heel, which I think is kind of dumb. We have Kalisto face Cesaro. Kalisto loses this match due to, Lince Dorado and Gran Metalik interfering. This gets Kalisto angry. Kalisto starts pushing and shoving again with Lince Dorado. Is Kalisto gonna pull a Santos Escobar? Like, this is the thing I'm trying to think about in my mind. Like, if Kalisto turns heel, what are they gonna do? Is he gonna keep the mask on his face, or is he gonna pull a Santos Escobar and pretty much remove his mask, take the mask off his face, and we see his actual face, and then he gets a name change. Then he gets a name change. He gets new music. What are they doing here? Personally, I don't really like the Lucha House Party all that much, but whatever, I guess. Then the main event was Big E and Heavy Machinery facing John Morrison and Miz, hey hey ho ho, and Sheamus. And Sheamus just cracks the shits in this match. Pretty much scares the crap out of John Morrison and the Miz. And the Miz starts running like a scared little pussy. But then Sheamus ends up leaving the match. Which leads to Big E nailing the big ending on the Miz, pinning him for the 1, 2, 3. And then Roman Reigns would sign the contract, as we talked about at the beginning, with Paul Heyman by his side, marking Roman Reigns as a heel. Crazy! Crazy. Crazy. It's a very crazy ending to, it's a very crazy ending to SmackDown. I thought SmackDown was actually pretty solid. I thought it was a solid show. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for joining me. Hit that thumbs up. Comment your opinions on SmackDown down below. And I will see you all next time. Catch you later.